Are your Google ads burning through budget with zero results? Hey there. If you're a business owner who's ever felt completely lost staring at your Google Ads dashboard, wondering why you're paying for clicks that never convert, you're definitely not alone. I'm Sarah. I've been working in Google for the past 17 years. I've helped hundreds of businesses just like yours turn their Google ads from money pits, losing tons of money, into profit making machines. Today, we're going to deep dive into something that trips up 90% of the business owners that I work with, and that is Google Ads match types. And here's the thing, if you get this wrong, you could be throwing away thousands of dollars down the drain every single month. Let me paint a picture that probably sounds familiar. You decide to try Google Ads because you know you need more customers or leads. You set up a campaign, you choose some keywords, and you just wait for the magic to happen like everyone sold you on, including Google Ads. But instead, what you end up getting is clicks from people searching for things that you had absolutely no clue had to do with your business. They have nothing to do with your business, and you're even getting a lot of job applicants. Your budget disappears faster than free donuts in an office break room, and you're left wondering, does Google Ads even work? Does it not work for small businesses? Do I not have enough budget? Here is what's happening. You're probably using the wrong match types. We'll find out that this isn't your fault. Google doesn't exactly make this stuff crystal clear. In fact, they've changed how match types work so many times that even experienced PPC marketers like myself can get confused. The truth is, most business owners I talk to have no idea that there are different ways to tell Google which searches should trigger their ads. They just throw keywords into the campaigns, they hope for the best. But hope is not a strategy, my friend. The three official match types are broad match, phrase match, and exact match. So let's get started with the basics. Google officially recognizes three match types. Each one works differently. There is broad match. This is the first one, and this is actually the default setting, which means if you don't specify otherwise, this is what you're using. With broad match, Google shows your ad for searches that are related to your keyword. And I use the word related very, very loosely here. Let's say you sell accounting software. If you bid on the keyword accounting software with a broad match type, your ad might show up for someone that searches for free math apps, bookkeeping classes, or even calculator download. Do you see the problem here? The good news? You will get a lot of traffic, a lot of it. The bad news, most of it will be completely irrelevant to your business, even if you write the ads completely perfectly. The next step is phrase match. Showing phrase match is like putting accounting software, for example, in, and you put it and think that it should work like a phrase. So what accounting software should I choose? Or the best accounting software, just like it sounds. You have a phrase inserted. But the reality is with phrase match, your ad will show when someone's search includes your exact phrase or a close variation in the same order. So best accounting software would trigger your ad, but so would accounting software reviews, for example. But software for accounting wouldn't, because the words are in different order. This gives you more control than broad match, but it still allows some flexibility. Then there's exact match. Exact match is where you set it up by putting it in square brackets around the keyword. So like accounting software, and you put brackets around it. Now, here's where it gets confusing. Exact match doesn't exactly mean what you think it means. Google will still show your ad for close variations, which include searches with the same meaning but different words. So, for example, accounting software might match to bookkeeping program, which they're the same thing, but a lot of times they don't convert the same way because somebody that types in bookkeeping software might have different intent than somebody searching accounting program. And that's because Google considers these close variations the same intent, but as marketers, we know that the intent isn't always the same. So exact match typically gives you the most relevant traffic, but it also is very low volume. So there is also what I call a secret fourth match type. And I call this fourth match type the one that nobody talks about. And what it is I call it arguably the most important, and I call it scope. Understanding this will change really the way that you think about keywords. So for example, I'm going to give an analogy. Pretend like you're selling romance novels online. You could bid for the keyword book. That's a very broad scope. Everyone searching for any kind of book might see your ad. Or you could bid on the term romance novel. That's a much narrower scope. Only people specifically looking for romance novels would end up seeing your ad. So it's the same match type, but it's a different scope. And this is where most business owners go wrong. They either choose keywords that are way too broad and waste money on irrelevant traffic thinking their match type has it covered, or they choose keywords that are way too narrow, again, thinking match type has it covered, and then they get no traffic at all because they're too long. I've seen campaigns where someone selling CRM software was bidding on software, and imagine the kind of traffic that brings in. And I've seen others bidding on only super specific terms like the best cloud-based CRM software and getting virtually nothing, or cloud-based CRM software for real estate agents. I had a client that insisted on that because they were targeting real estate agents. I've even had people add, software for real estate agents in Phoenix, and then they wonder why they're not getting any impressions and Google won't even show their ad. So really the magic happens when you find the sweet spot. You want to find what Google will show, a keyword that's specific enough to attract the right people and broad enough to actually get some volume. And you want to do that with a combination of scope, match types, and then obviously the length of that phrase there. So here's the thing. If you are trying to choose the right match type for your business, how are you going to decide what to use? Well, it depends on your business type. So I'm going to give you some specific recommendations to help. B2B lead generation, you're selling services to other business. I almost always recommend starting with exact match. Why? Because B2B buyers, they're very specific in search terms and they know exactly what they're looking for, and they tend to use technical terms when they're searching. That being said, sometimes you'll get a lot of volume, and so you want to use your ad copy to go ahead and basically pre-qualify that person and use some of those technical terms in your actual ad copy if you have to go broader in scope or in match type. Someone searching for HR consulting services, they know they need HR consulting. They're not going to convert if you have basically an ad that talks about employee handbook templates. It's not going to happen. So that is just something that you have to be aware of. You may see the impressions and a low click-through rate, but that's actually a good thing there. So start with exact match and B2B, get your campaigns profitable. If you can expand to phrase match for additional volume, go ahead and do it. I typically at this point in time will move from exact right up to broad because I find phrase to be a little bananas these days. There's not much value in that middle ground. And then you also have to balance volume versus relevance trade-off. So the reality check for every business owner right now, you cannot both have high volume and perfect relevance. It's impossible right now. If you need more traffic, you have to accept some irrelevant clicks. If you want perfect relevance, then you have to accept lower volume. And that is the fundamental trade-off in Google Ads. If you have that high volume, you're going to have to very much pre-qualify in your ads. It's always a push-pull in Google Ads. I've had clients say, I want tons of traffic, but I only want people who are ready to buy right now. And I have to say, sorry, that's not how that works. You need to decide what's more important for your business at this stage. Upgrading and downgrading scope is going to be another level. And again, this is the one that a lot of people don't talk about. It's an advanced strategy most people miss. You can adjust scope within the same match type. So if accounting software isn't getting enough volume in exact match, switching to a phrase match, might work. But instead you could try expanding the scope to business accounting software or small business accounting software. So those are examples of scope adjustments. This gives you more control than just changing that match type, and it helps so you can find that real perfect balance. Another advanced strategy is really mixing these match types. So when you mix match types, here's the strategy I use all the time. So what I do is I start with exact match for my highest converting terms. These are my money makers. I know there's volume in there. I then add sometimes phrase match, although lately I've been pulling a little bit away from phrase match of the same keywords to catch additional traffic. And finally, I use a few broad keywords to discover those new opportunities. Think about it as a pyramid. Exact match is at the top for my best performers. Phrase match would be in the middle for that expansion, and broad match at the bottom for discovery. So the exact match is going to be the one that trumps in the auction. And here's something that you have to understand that's critical. If someone searches what we call a query for the exact term that you have In multiple match types, the exact match version will always win. It's called the exact match Trump rule. It's in Google Ads. So if you have both accounting software and accounting software in your account, exact match and broad match, and someone searches exactly for accounting software, the exact match keyword will trigger, not the phrase match, not the broad match. This is good news for you because it means that you can have multiple match types without competing against each other for the same searches. Here's the real truth about match types. They don't mean what they say. This is a real truth. The match types don't actually mean what the name suggests. So exact isn't exact. I explained that earlier. Phrase isn't phrase, and broad can sometimes match to be weirdly specific. Google is constantly changing how these work behind the scenes. In fact, I even sort of flinched as I was describing phrase because I couldn't remember if word order mattered or didn't matter, and I might have to Google it after I make this video. That is how that works as an expert in Google Ads today. I've seen exact match keywords trigger for searches that weren't even close to the original keyword. I've seen broad match keywords show for very specific searches only. The algorithm is constantly evolving, and as it's evolving, you're always there managing, putting in negatives. So it can get weird at times. But what you're really going to need to be doing is following your data. This is why you absolutely must monitor your search term reports. You don't just set up these campaigns and walk away. You check it at least bare minimum weekly to see what searches are actually triggering your ad. The common mistakes that I see business owners make is really thinking that match types are exactly what they mean. They only use broad match because that's what it defaults to, and they don't know any better and haven't talked to a Google Ads expert. And they also will end up getting people into a lot of hot water because the people who have no interest in buying you are clicking on your ads. I've also seen the mistake of businesses being way too restrictive. So that's the flip side of just taking the default of broad match. And this is usually from the type of client who maybe is more advanced and they think they know a lot about Google Ads, but they don't study Google Ads all day like I do. And so it will be a very savvy business owner. And so they'll find themselves adding all exact and being extremely restrictive and then not getting any volume through. And that is a mistake just as much as being super broad, because then what happens is they're complaining they don't have any impressions. And then we have to retrain their brain and the algorithm to start getting in, frankly, stuff they don't want so they can start to pull back again. And then I also see another mistake is not using negative keywords. I had a client come to me who hasn't put in negative keywords in 3 years. And that's a huge one. Not using negatives with those broader match types can get the algorithm chasing something that maybe isn't as effective. So if you're using the phrase or the broad match, you must build a negative keyword list. And bare minimum, even if you're not looking at it, excluding what you're seeing, include things like the jobs, cheap, some words that you just would not want associated with your brand. Cheap, dirty, gross. I always add a standard list of negatives as well. I've seen accounts in my past as I've been consulting that have been able to reduce clicks by 60% just by adding solid negatives. So what are your next steps? To wrap this up, here are some key points to remember. There are 3 official match types, but scope matters more than most people realize. For B2B businesses, start with exact. You can't have the perfect relevance and high volume, so pick your priority, and always mix your match types for best results. Monitor your search terms regularly, and the match types don't work exactly like their names suggest. If you're feeling confused right now, that is completely normal. This stuff is complicated. I myself sometimes will have to pause and Google the answer to a question, and Google, the platform, doesn't make it easy. The help information doesn't make it easy. And that's exactly why I built my business, is I help companies just like yours navigate this maze. I've helped hundreds of businesses turn their Google Ads around. If you have any questions, feel free to add them in the comments. And thank you so much for listening today.